This is what started me on this project, this culvert on the corner of Russell and Ramseyville. This culvert made absolutely no sense to me. There's no road above it. There's nothing above it except trees and shrubs. And so I went in trying to figure out why this culvert was there, and I discovered this. This made even less sense. Although at some point I figured out that something must have been run up here. So these rails are planted, there's two of them, one on each side of where the train used to run, but they're planted in the ground and they were painted yellow. I have found another example of this further along the route, not far from that particular point. I suspect the NCC planted them there sort of to keep track of where it used to run. It is still a proposed trail, hiking trail, although the 417 stop that from happening at this end, but on the other side of the 417 it certainly can be opened up and turned into a recreational trail. I'm only going to trace the Canadian side of this route, even though it ran down through New York to Tupper Lake. From there you could take a train anywhere, New York City east and I imagine west. I'm not actually sure, I haven't researched that part, but let's start on Cornwall Island, where there are now two roads to indicate where the train used to run, and I'm just guessing this, although if you look at the way my line crosses through, I have no doubt that this is the route that it takes. At the very top of Cornwall Island, you can see there are two bridge piers. There's actually three. There's two in the St. Lawrence River and one in the canal. The canal one used to be a turntable. The bridge used to turn to allow boats through. But at the bottom, there's two piers. They're still there. The American side, they took them out because that's where the ships go, and there would have been too much danger there. But there's no danger of anything other than small pleasure crafts hitting those piers, and they're well marked. I couldn't help but when I saw this thing to go and see what it was all about. An old electric rail engine that used to shuttle cars from between the three railroads that used to run through Cornwall to the various businesses around Cornwall. This one's located on the corner of 9th and Brookdale. You go and see it. It's right there. You can't miss it. And it's a very old, as you can tell. And the plaque explains how it was used by the New York Railway to shuttle cars back and forth between businesses. There are a few places where the tracks still exist in Cornwall, and at Highway 2 is one of them. It crosses the highway at a level crossing, not used very often since the tracks were a little bit rusted, not completely rusted, still used somewhat, but they headed north and south, and that's all there is. It's not very much. Next stop is Tollgate, and every once in a while digging around you get a surprise, and Tollgate was certainly one of those. There's literally a spike welded to a T-bar. I'm going to take a shot here and say that it's an original spike from when they lifted the tracks the first time and then relayed them. This is exactly the run that the railroad took and the crossing that it made at Tollgate. I had a feeling looking at the satellite images that there was something there because the South Raisin River runs through that. So I found this bridge abutment, 1926. It's in pretty bad shape, but it's all there. Cornwall Centre Road and the back entrance to Cornwall Motor Speedway. This is the way the train used to run. You see, in one direction, which I did, it ends up in a really thick brush, and then the other end of it is the back entrance to the Cornwall Motor Speedway. I was really surprised to find that the railroad ran behind the Cornwall Motor Speedway. The back access road from Centre Road was actually the path the railroad takes, as you can see here, and then it moves on and goes on to their private property where those trucks and trailers are. That was the path it took. Power Dam Road and Atchison Road, both of these are pretty well covered by private property, so I wasn't able to go on there. This person's maintained it as a nice little grass path there between the trees, And then across the street is just the space between Power Dam and Atchison. And then on the Atchison side, you see the path goes there. It's on private property. And then on the other side is the grass between the two roads. So that's that as far as this intersection is concerned. At this point, Atchison comes back around and it crosses it again. Definitely a recreational trail, and very well used at that. It then crosses County 36. There is absolutely nothing here. I had a hardest time. You're going to see a picture of a path, but that's actually off to the side of it. So I don't think it's used at this point, this particular area. But I still find it strange that you can still see it clear as day on the map. So I know it runs that way, and there's an old railroad tie. So I know there was something there. And across the street, there's no indication. There's a very long stretch here between the 401 and Black River where it crosses the village of Black River. I'd love to explore it, but I was looking at the path there, and it's kind of narrow and rough, and it requires a 4x4 or a dirt bike or something of that nature to make that trip. I'm not doing it. We move on to Avonmore, Highway 15. This definitely looks flooded, and I've seen this on numerous occasions. Looking at Google satellite here, it seems that a lot of the trail is underwater at times. So I have to wonder. Good skidoo trail though. County Road 18 is yet another great example of how this trail is used summer and winter. Emer Road west of Avonmore Road, still used as a trail, as you can see. These things I'd love to explore if I had a dirt bike, but I don't, as I've said before. Northfield Road takes a bit of a jog here, and there's one small farm to the east of it before it continues north. And I went down that road and into the woods. A lot of fun to do on a big motorcycle. And I found this, and it was amazing because the ties are still on the ground, and this was a very well used path. It's funny while making this video how many private properties I had to go on, and these people were outside and they see me pull up on my motorcycle and they're looking at me funny, and then when I explain what I'm doing, well, the floodgates open. And that's how I discovered this ticket selling building. This was probably a flag station in Northfield. It's still standing, although not by much. Although this was far from the best one that I found, there were bridge abutments here over this creek. They're in pretty sad shape, having been overgrown, and obviously, well, they're not tended to anymore. This is where the train crossed McRae Road. Hoople 7th is our next stop. On one side, yes, it's a trail, but on the other side, it has a no trespassing sign, and I imagine it's private property. Somebody owns it, and they're not letting anybody in. And now we come to the village of Newington. The railroad was incredibly important in those days. It brought communication, food, resources, supplies. It also provided jobs, because the old steam trains, they were very demanding as far as water and coal and everything else that they needed. Very, very important lifeline. Where it crosses Waldorf, I found this incredibly interesting culvert. It's 1920, and I can't quite make out the last number, but so far they've been between 22 and 27, so I'll assume it's in that area. It seems all the culverts were redone then. Very thick, very heavy build, very impressive. Finch and Obnabrook Boundary Road, sorry if I mispronounce it, it's obviously named after someone. Yeah, this just continues on, path through the woods. Concession 1-2, not all of it is a path, so it comes in on one side of the road as a trail, and on the other side it disappears into a farmer's field. The markers are still there, but it definitely changes at this point. There's very little indication that the New York Central ran through Finch, although they still have a full train service running right through the village, so it's not like they ever got rid of it. Coming out of Finch, it crosses through a farm. So somebody obviously bought the land, leveled the railroad, and built a farm. And on the other side, I actually met this person. Not everybody likes skidoos running through their backyards, so they bought the land, leveled it, and gated it. Concession 3-4 west of Route 12. You can see the gate at the other end of it coming up. And then on the other side of the street, it continues on as a trail. Now here's a good example of two things I had to deal with. This is at Concession Road 4-5. In the distance, you see where the trees start, and there it starts even farther. I had to make sure that I was at the right spot, and if it wasn't for those trees, I never would have found it. County Road 9, Berwick Street or Union Street, take your pick. But the railroad ran behind Berwick, and this is a business that it ran through. I'm pretty sure, although this is probably not the original building, but I'm pretty sure there was something there for the railroad. And then it goes on behind the village. Concession 6-7, there's absolutely nothing stopping skidoos here. In fact, the map and the rules and everything else are marked right next to the trail as advertised. And as you can see, there's no holdup. Ashburn Road, Concession Road 8. This one I actually went back and did later because when I first saw it, I thought it was just somebody's driveway. The interesting part about this particular area and why I'm so glad I went back is these posts. I had heard that these line the entire railway. I would imagine it only lined where there was cows and pastures and whatnot. But they're absolutely fascinating. They're very old and they're deteriorating. Yell Road, where once again I found some more posts. These ones were used to keep the cows in check. They have the electric wires running through it. On one side of the road it's cows, and on the other side of the road it's a farm. And if you Google map, you can see how it follows the farm. I have to thank locals. Every time I would ask someone where the railroad ran, where I could go and find it, they would direct me to the right place. And this is the Chrysler abutments, the bridge abutments going over the Nation River. It's very, very old. It's crumbling. But you can still see it, and you see the little details like this line of rock that's in the middle of this is the one across the way. The line of rock, there's stones that are placed there, and then they would put the rest of the cement over it for the bridge. It's just little details like that, and you see that in Embrun as well. It must have been the same contractor. On the north side of the Nation River, it continues on as a recreational trail that goes around Chrysler. But the actual, they're falling apart. They're very old. There's chunks of cement and rock missing everywhere. And here's a picture of the one across the way. You can see that line of stone again. Concession 10-11, they've done a really nice job here. It is a path. It has plaques explaining wild parsnip. And the trail goes on. It's got nice benches made with railroad ties yet again. I couldn't help but notice this when I was doing my research, but that diagonal line that my little train is pointing to is actually the railroad still visible, even though it's been flattened, even though it's been plowed over and over and over again in the last 57 years, it's still visible. 900 West, and on the one side of the road, it's a farmer's field. And on the other side of the road, it becomes a driveway. St. Albert Road, just after the curve. Farmer's Field on one side, and it actually doesn't become a trail on this side at all. If you're at all familiar with Marionville Way, if you go east from where it splits it down the middle, It's not a road at all, and I had a lot of fun negotiating this on my motorcycle. There's absolutely no indication that the railway ran through here. There's no path, no trail. Saint Edouard Road. It crosses farmers' fields at each end. So most of this area as we get closer to Embrun here is mostly farmers' fields. So this is the point where it crosses 500. There's still little stretches of trees and that, but yeah, it just ends up being a farmer's field. Where the railroad crossed Saint Joseph, I made quite a discovery here. So on one side of the road, it just runs off into the trees or comes in from the trees. And on the other side of the road, a bridge abutment over this creek. It's a very, very deep bridge abutment here. The creek carved itself a nice path through the ground. And yeah, that was a surprise find for me. As I said earlier, most of this is farmers' fields, so this is where it crosses Route 400. You can see a row of trees in the back, far away, and then closer, the same thing. The last stop before Embrun, this is where it crosses Saint Jacques, comes across a farmer's field on one side, and then a private property and another farm on the other side. On the south side of the Castor River in Embrun, I found some really nice bridge abutments there. This was a wider bridge because the Castor is pretty good here. Dated 1924. You can see they're everything's still there. The steel plates to hold the bridge in place, and somebody was nice enough to put a picnic table on it. And now we're looking across the river at the other side, but back to this side and the picnic table and the view from further on. On the north side of the Castor River looking across, you see the line of rocks that I was telling you about before, and above it is another one. This bridge abutment was built in two pieces. There was a lower part and an upper part, and they were renovated at different times. So this 1924 on the lower part, and then as you look across, you can see the two upper and lower parts of the abutment. And the other side of it was renovated in 1922. So it seems that in the 20s this entire railroad was redone. For this section of the New York Central between Embrun and Russell, I did a video using my bicycle because this is now the New York Central Fitness Trail. It is a beautifully paved path that runs 7 kilometers between Embrun and Russell, ending at Forest Road. I'm just going to refer to that particular video. You see all the different roads that it crosses, but this is a beautiful thing that the county of Russell did. Right before the New York Central Fitness Trail ends, I made this discovery, and I'm talking it's mere meters from the end of it. This old culvert here, no date on it unfortunately, but you can tell it's from that period. And the other interesting thing I found is here's the beginning of the trail, the 0 kilometer marker. No horses allowed apparently. Well, I guess not. It'd be running over people, and then it continues on the other side. Here it crosses Route 200. Nothing really special about this one. It just continues on as a path in the forest. After a very short ride from 200 to Hamilton, not much to see here either, although I did find an old railroad tie on the side, but on the other side of the street it sort of continues, but it's a lot of brush. At Boundary Road, County 41, there are markers for skidoos, so it's used in the winter, but in the summer not so much. It's a farmer's field. Once again, the railroad makes a quick cut through 2 roads here. So Black Creek and Cooper Hill, I'm going to combine the 2 together. It's blocked at one end. I imagine it's the short passage between Black Creek and Cooper Hill, but it does continue on, and it is definitely a skidoo trail. Where it crosses Parkway is a continuation of the skidoo route, so it comes in one side and it goes out the other. York's Corners Road, just south of Edwards. I thought I'd do something different here. I show the tree line going up one side of the field, going up the other side of the field, and the path does run down the middle. The railway then crossed Mitch Owens, and here I met a young couple with their child, and they knew all about the New York Central Railroad. So it was kind of cool that way, that there's some younger people that still know and understand how significant that railway was. This is what made this project so much fun to do. So not far from Mitch Owens Road, in the middle of the woods, I drove my motorcycle because I could see a culvert. Where my little train is pointing is a white line, and this is what that white line is. It's this culvert, this 1922 ancient piece of stone and cement work. They did this in the middle of nowhere. I'm sure the woods were not there at the time, because from what I heard, the countryside was pretty bare because wood was in such use at the time. At the Thunder Road crossing, it becomes obvious that it's going to be less and less of a trail as you get closer to the city, of course. So this is the last part of it going off south, and when you go north, it is completely blocked. Not everything I did worked out. After spending some time on the phone and getting permission to get out here, what you're looking at is an artificial lake, and where my little train pointer is pointing is a cement culvert. Unfortunately, it is a modern cement culvert. It was replaced to create the lakes, so that one didn't work out for me. I decided to do this video starting in Cornwall because that's the origins of the Ottawa New York Railroad. But when I was doing the research, I actually started in Ottawa, and this is one of the first places I found, one of those first discoveries. A very heavy duty culvert, 1927, right on Piperville Road, close to Anderson. Right on the Anderson Links road leading to the clubhouse. It cuts the golf course in a weird triangle, but this is a golf cart road used by golfers, and on the other side is just trees. Here it crosses Anderson Road, not far from Anderson Link. On one side of the road it is fenced off, and then on the other side there's no path. It's just trees and woods and brush, and there's the tree line going off in the distance. At this point it crosses Leitrim, and you can see at the other end it is still fenced, and then on the other side it goes off into the woods. You're not allowed anything in these woods. They seem to be highly protected. There's no bicycling, no dogs, no nothing allowed. I will let my video explain this one. This is the line. I'm in Ramseyville. This is the old Threadwell, which continues on the other side of the Queensway. The 417 cut it in half. So just on the other side of the 417 is the remainder of the road, which is closed. But this is where the railroad ran. And how do I know that? I love making these finds, as you all know. They planted a rail line in the woods, just like the other place. And it goes off this way, but it's pretty well blocked now. Fallen trees, and they haven't maintained that part of it. Oh, and there's another one. So it just goes to show you, there's two, one here, one there. And now we're back to where it all started, the culvert at Russell and Ramseyville. A little more, a few more pictures, a little more intense. I love the upcoming part here. Instead of using rebar, it was square bar that was twisted. Here's an old railroad tie that was thrown over, and there's my two rails. Couldn't get a picture of both of them together. The brush was just too thick, as you can see, but that's what got me started. This was a late discovery. I kept looking over thinking there's something there, and I had to park my motorcycle on the off ramp and just go take a look, and sure enough, there's a very old bridge foundation right at the Hunt Club interchange. I didn't get any pictures of the other side of it because it was completely overgrown, but it's identical to this side. I think that when they built the Hunt Club interchange, they realized what they were looking at. The line of trees, they left it inside the circle. My little pointer points to a line of trees within the off-ramp circle, and then it marches off towards Ramseyville and Russell. So I just found it fascinating that they built the interchange and they left the line of trees there. Where my little orange pointer is, you'll note that there's a green line moving from south to north. This was the path the train took. In fact, it was still in use until 2002, and I found rails. The rails are still there. They're completely rusted and overgrown, and most of it backs onto different businesses. The posts are still there with in this example, the wires hanging off of it. So yes, it still operated, those lines still operated until 2002. The best place to go see all this is the Science and Tech Museum. The tracks ran right behind it, so they're still there. The Bytown Railway Society manages and restores a lot of trains there. And right parked in front of the museum is this beautiful steam engine. It's all there. Here we see a place where they used to pour oil to keep the wheels lubricated. And in here I found charcoal. It's the burner. I had to lift my camera over my head. Fortunately, I have an LCD display that I can adjust. And I couldn't believe there was still coal in the burner. It leaves the Saint Laurent Industrial Parks and crosses over Innes Road. It's a bridge close to Saint Laurent Boulevard that is no longer used. And then it goes under Saint Laurent Boulevard on the just past Belfast. And then it goes through the train yards, what is now called the train yards, and where the new train station is. Where the train crossed the Rideau River, the bridge is still there. It is behind the RCMP headquarters on Riverside Drive. It is now a pedestrian bridge, although it's getting old, it's getting up there, but it's still safe. Here the builder left his mark, although I can't quite make out what it says. This was a shared bridge. It wasn't just New York Central using it. It came up here on Herdman Street. This was their station for a very long time. They also had a station on Sussex Drive, and they also used Union Station for a time until economics stopped them from going there. So that's it. I'm done. Reached the end of the line. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed the journey making this video. It's been a lot of fun.